Um, I think the first thing to do uh, is to call for a truce in the war on drugs and a prisoner exchange. We don't have anybody to exchange, but the exchange should go on anyway. Release the drug prisoners. Um, a lot of people are doing exceedingly long sentences, 20, 30-year sentences for LSD. That's the crime. That's the crime of this generation. That so many people are behind bars for exploring their own consciousness. It would have been unthinkable to the framers of the Constitution that freedom of speech that exploring one's own consciousness needed specific protection. That would have been unthinkable to them. And here we have these people on the Supreme Court who claim to be, I don't know what, strict interpreters, original, how from original interpretation they get that, well, yeah, that gives the federal government the right to prosecute drugs even if the states say it's okay. I don't know. It shows the farce and the hollowness of their claims of strict interpretation. It's no such thing. It's strict interpretation only when it suits them. So we need to stop putting people in prison. That's the first thing. And once we stop doing that and let the people out who are already in, maybe we can come up with some kind of gradual, rational way to deal with these things. It's not at all clear whether one should be experienced. We often hear that, you should have experienced people there, but, the kids seem to do pretty well with these things. The experience I'm thinking of was particularly driven by music. It seems to key into music particularly, and music can drive the experience and create a whole lot, but it opened up layers and layers of meaning within the music, and it was like hanging on to each particle of time. The particles of time seemed to separate out. It was like existence is time strobing, and the beats in the music were able to maintain that. God knows what would have happened if the music would have stopped, The radio station we were listening to kept fading out, and the static was overcoming everything, but we, desperately trying to pull it back in a bit. I mean, God knows what would have happened if it would have faded out completely. We would have been floating in some unknown land with no identities and no way to get back to our bodies, and no connection to the world as we knew it, or anything else.
The brain, and in particular the human brain, is the most complex structure we know of in the universe. It's incredibly complicated. It has hundreds of billions of cells, perhaps 100 billion or so neurons, and perhaps 5 to 10 times as many of another kind of cell called a glial cell, or class of cells. And all of these, perhaps up to 1 trillion cells, are interconnected and interacting in various extremely complex ways. Despite the fact that we have learned a lot about the brain over the last few decades, and you can read sexy articles in Time magazine and elsewhere about how much we know about the brain, and see all kinds of pretty pictures about the brain, it really is mostly still a mystery. And the complexity of it really prevents any easy answer to much of what's going on in there at this point. But we do know that one of the things that does happen in the brain is that cells talk to each other in part through chemical signals. cells release specific chemical substances which have come to be called neurotransmitters, examples of which are well-known molecules like serotonin and dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, glutamate, and so forth. And then these signaling molecules diffuse from one cell to the next, and they bind to specific protein structures that are in the downstream cell that are called receptors. And the neurotransmitter interacts structurally with the receptor, causes the receptor to change in shape in some way, and then that shape change is propagated in the cell through some kind of internal chemistry to do various other kinds of complicated biochemical things inside the cell, or perhaps open channels and cause electrically charged ions to move through and change the electrical potential. So there are a number of different ways that this signaling can be can have effects on the cells, and this is one of the main ways, if not the main way, that cells communicate with each other in the brain. And recently, as I mentioned, these trace amine receptors were discovered as a new kind of neurotransmitter receptor. Well, a new kind of receptor that presumably responds to endogenous neurotransmitters, and it was found that things that were already known, like dopamine and serotonin and so forth, really didn't have any effect at these receptors of significance. However, other molecules which are known to occur in very small or trace amounts, like DMT, or other amines like dopamine and tyramine and so forth, do have potent activating effects at these receptors. So it provides a means by which another class of molecules that hadn't been appreciated in the past as neurotransmitters now can be elevated to the status of neurotransmitters. The finding that DMT occurs in our brain and in our body and in the brains and bodies of other mammals and presumably other animals, and what is the function of that? And that has long been a mystery, and there have been various interesting hypotheses set forth as to why DMT might be there, what it might be doing, all of which I think are really exciting to address more completely in some way. I guess my own feeling is that it's there as some kind of neurotransmitter, and that has been substantiated more recently with just in the last few years the discovery of a new class of neurotransmitter receptors that are called trace amine receptors, and they respond to molecules like DMT and other related what are called amines, and give a mechanism by which these molecules, which had been previously thought to be, if they were there in the body at all, just some kind of random metabolite or something like that with no function, now give a possible mechanism by which molecules like DMT might actually modulate neural activity in the brain. So it wouldn't be at all surprising to me if it were further substantiated with more research that DMT has a neural transmitter function in the brain and that it is involved in various specific processes of conventional mental function. I think evolutionary biology-driven answer to that would be it's a simple molecule, closely related to tryptophan, the essential amino acid for people, and certainly essential for proteins in all living organisms. And plants are complex and variegated chemists, and they make derivatives of amino acids in copious numbers, and this would be a reasonable, simple derivative to make. So it's around perhaps for that reason, but that sort of begs the question of why do plants make anything that is not obviously essential to their needs, and why DMT is occurring in plants, and why psilocybin occurs in mushrooms, or mescaline occurs in peyote, or cannabinoids occur in the cannabis plant, I think is a really interesting and profound question that nobody has even really adequately addressed yet. So why I think we really don't know. And then one could speculate, oh, okay, well, maybe as some have, that maybe the DMT is there for people to ingest it and become spiritually connected with our world and with the plant world and so forth. And perhaps something like that is going on, but that really goes beyond what we're able to kind of incorporate in our current scientific framework.